I've created some videos in the past about life estates, what they are and how to create them. And you can see the links to those videos in the description of this video. Now I wanted to make a video about how to remove a life estate and whether that's possible. Now, as a review, a life estate is what we phrase as a concurrent tenancy, whereby there's more than one person on title. And usually one of the individuals will have the ability to live at the property, pay the bills, receive the income from the property, and enjoy any of the benefits that the property has for their lifetime. So they have a present interest in the property. And then upon their passing or upon the passing of another individual, title will then shift to other individuals on title, and they'll be called remainderment. Now, one of the most common ways that you can create a life estate with regard to a piece of real estate is with a deed. And what I typically see, as I have explained in the past, what I typically see is mom or dad or both will come into the office and they'll want to make sure that their children will receive title to their real estate upon their passing. So mom or dad will transfer title to the children and reserve life estates for themselves, thereby making them the life tenants and the children the remainderment. And the children then are to receive title by operational law upon the passing of their parents. So a deed is one way to create a life estate. Now, another way that I've seen a life estate created is through a will. Now remember, a will in general is a written instrument whereby you're going to designate how your assets are going to be divided at the time of your passing. And inside that will, you do have the ability to create a life estate in one of your devisees or one of your heirs, to try to keep it simple. And once again, once that happens, once you create a life estate through your will, upon your passing, that individual will have the ability to live at a piece of real estate for their lifetime and enjoy all the benefits and pay all the expenses associated with that property. And then upon that person's passing, the heir's passing, it'll go to the other heirs in your will or devisees in your will. And yet a third way that I've seen life estates created is with a trust. Now, once again, remember, a trust is a written instrument usually that creates a fiduciary responsibility in an individual or individuals called trustees to manage assets within the trust for the benefit of others called beneficiaries. And so you can create life estate language inside a trust. Now, in general, there are two types of trusts that you can, one of two types of trusts that you can create that fall into two general categories. One is revocable, and that means that the trust is very flexible. You can change people involved in the trust, you can change the terms of the trust, and you can also revoke or terminate the trust at any time. Now, the second type of a trust that you can create is irrevocable. And with this type of a trust, it's more structured, it's harder to change, and sometimes, it depends, but sometimes you'll need a judge's order in order to change terms or individuals that are involved with that trust. Now back to the question. Can you remove a life estate once you've created it? Well, let's first take the scenario where you've created a life estate through your will. Now, you can change your will at any time. And all you simply need to do is rip up the old will or create a new will, which will revoke the prior will having that language, which created the life estate, and thus the life estate would be terminated or changed. Now let's take a look at a trust. Remember, the trust was the third way that we discussed as to how you can create a life estate. Now with a trust, if it's a revocable trust, then yes, a life estate can be removed or changed at any time. Because remember, with a revocable trust, the terms, the people, things can be changed very easily. You just have to follow the terms of the trust. So the language inside the trust will tell you how to amend your trust. Now, with a trust, if it's irrevocable, that's going to be a little bit more difficult to do unless you reserve, if you're creating the trust, you reserve the power to amend, the power to change the trust. And then in that instance, you will have the ability to remove or change the life estate. But in general, remember, irrevocable trusts are harder to change, and therefore it's harder to remove that type of language. Now back to the first way that we discussed, creating a life estate with a deed. Now remember, a deed is a written instrument whereby you're conveying title to a piece of real estate. And once you've created that life estate, you're going to need the consent of all parties that you name on your deed. So in my example that I gave, mom and dad, or mom or dad, would have to get the consent of their children that they added to title in order to remove the life estate or change the life estate in general now. So if you have everybody's consent, then it will be just as simple to draft a new deed and remove the life estate or change the life estate terminology. Now, if you don't have everybody's consent, it's very difficult because remember, a deed conveys title. And if you don't have everybody's consent, then you may need court involvement. In Massachusetts, where I'm from, the land court then would have to be approached with a petition to partition. In other words, break apart or sever the title to the real estate, enforce the sale, and all parties then would have to separate the proceeds from the sale. It can get very difficult at that point. So to answer the question, when it comes to a deed, if you don't have everybody's consent, then you cannot just remove a life estate. If you do have everybody's consent, then it will be just a simple deed that would create or terminate the life estate. Now, if you're watching me on YouTube or Facebook, make sure that you check out the links that I've included inside the description of this video. If you're watching me on Facebook, make sure that you like the video. If you're watching me on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe in the lower right-hand corner. And if you're still watching me on YouTube, some of my prior videos that are related to this one will be appearing. Make sure that you check those out as well too. Dave Ceruolo, CeruoloLaw.com.